GT3 Racing's biggest event is about to get underway in earnest because pre-qualifying is set to begin here at Spa-Francorchamps for the TotalEnergies 24 Hours of Spa. Welcome everybody to a dry Spa, a warm, a mild Spa. It's a slightly overcast Spa, and it is a Spa with an entry of 58 GT3 cars and a who's who of GT racing. We had a free practice session this morning, but now pre-qualifying is important because, of course, if the weather became really bad, these times would end up forming the grid. It also gives us a chance to have a look at the cars, the teams and the drivers that are going to take part in this fantastic event. David Addison and John Watson with you for the next hour of pre-qualifying. Watty, it's another amazing entry, and in terms of trying to pick a winner, this year's race wide open.
Well, I'm just going to make a little diary note, David, because all the things you said in the introduction is that the commentator's curse. It's dry, it's warm, it's Spa. Well, I'm looking above and I can see dark, well, actually, it's a variety of shades of grey cloud forming over the commentary booth. But there's 58 cars. There is a stellar entry. The driver lineup is phenomenal. I mean, I've not seen an entry here at Spa that is so strong, whichever way you look at it. The one that stands out to me, Jordan Pepper, who we've been bigging up for the last 2 seasons, and he's driving a Pro-Am car. How can a pro driver of that quality and standard not be engaged in a factory, whatever you want to call them, teams? Unbelievable. But what a great entry indeed.
Absolutely. Everywhere you look, there are star names. There is one. This has got to be a winning car. The KCMG, the Hong Kong-based team with the Porsche. Look at the livery. Absolutely stunning. Maxime Martin, Laurens Vanthoor, Nick Tandy. I mean, come on, it doesn't get much better.
There is a car, not the Audi we're looking at now. The Porsche is a perfect example of what a really good rapper, and I'm talking about a car rapper, can do. Not some of the, let's say, alternative music stars. Alexander West, never out of a racing car, bought himself a Formula One car the other day.
Irrepressible, isn't he? Loves his motorsport. And there is the end of the pit lane. Now, Spa looks a little bit different because although there are spectators allowed this weekend, it is a limited number, of course, as we still have to grind our way through the pandemic and the restrictions placed upon it. But on track, it is going to be just as normal, if not fiercer. Remember how close it got at the end of last year with Nick Tandy nursing the Rover Porsche home with its drivetrain sounding horrible. Well, we've got different teams, different driver combinations back this year, but 58 cars, another massively strong entry. The cars venturing out now, and this morning, the fastest time was done by Kelvin van der Linde in Audi number 32 that he shares with Charles Weerts and Dries Vanthoor. We know how good they have been this year in the sprint races in World Challenge Europe. That's another car you can't discount, the WRT Audi. And what about this? ACA ASP with its fleet of Mercedes, 89 with Lucas Auer at the wheel.
1 minute.
And the extra voice you hear in the background, you'll hear a lot of it over the course of the next few days when GT3 cars are on track. That is Alain Adam, who is the race director. And boy, is he in for a busy weekend.
Well, thinking back to Misano, what, 3-4 weekends ago, I think Alain Adam became the third commentator in the booth. I've never heard him so busy in all my life. I just pray and hope that everybody here this evening, this 1 hour session, the pre-qualifying sessions, before we go to those 4 15-minute sessions. But what was also interesting, David, from the session earlier in the morning, when, again, track conditions were about ideal, there was just, I think, 10 cars on this, 7.7 kilometer circuit, 4.35 miles, that were covered by just less than a second. Now, that's only going to get more concertinaed, more compressed as we go through this second of the 1 hour sessions.
Green flag, says the race director. One other little thing that we better get out of the way now is the dreaded track limits. Now, this year, there are a number of people in race control with their own room, their own base, and they are responsible for the track limit reports. And track limits are being policed at most corners around the circuit. The penalties for exceeding track limits used to be applied by the stewards. So there'd be a tossing up process, the report would go to the stewards would look at it, they'd call the team, they'd talk to the team, they'd discuss it, and then they'd apply a penalty. And it could be a couple of hours even before the penalties ended up being applied. The teams are saying we want it quicker than that. So the race director now has special dispensation to issue the penalties for track limit offences himself, and it's therefore a faster process, which means you can take the penalty earlier, possibly take advantage of a safety car earlier, for example. But turn 19, last week at British GT, for example here, turn 19, the exit of the chicane, that was a common problem in every category, and the curb, such as it is so flat, you can understand why people run so wide over it. The pit lane is emptying, cars gradually making their way out on track, including their number 159, the Aston Martin. That's the Garage 59 entry of Thomas Tuiler, Alex McDowell, Valentin Asclo and Nicolas Kiergaard from the Silver Cup.
You know, the whole track limits thing, I've been banging on about it since I could draw breath. And there's two ways you can look at it. You can either, everybody who transgresses, penalise them. You'll end up having the entire field probably sitting in the pit lane serving out a 1 minute stop-go penalty. Or, if that becomes almost ridiculous, then throw the rule book out of the door, let them do whatever they like. I don't agree with that personally. And at turn 19, I would have a wall up against the very edge of what is track limits, because that's a demarcation zone. The trouble is the exit of turn 19, it is a very flat curb. And last year, I mean, people weren't putting 4 wheels over. There were, I mean, it would have been the equivalent of 8 wheels across it on some occasions, and that was just in qualifying.
This morning, if you did 5 or more track limit offences, you got a 10-minute stop-go penalty, okay? 17 cars got a 10-minute stop-go penalty. That gives you some idea of how drivers were finding the limit, shall we say.
Here's another way. If a driver does it regularly, now some of these are pro drivers and they earn money, they get paid to drive, others are paying to drive, but certainly the pro drivers are who one would expect to respect the rules. Just dock them €1,000, $1,000, whatever, every time they transgress. That's always been a way that gets through to a driver's brain. It's funny how money and brain are so interconnected in pro racing drivers. I've run out of gas. What am I going to say? Am I wasting my time?
John, I'm with you. I'm with you. Vincent Abril you're looking at as the cars venture out then onto their first flying lap of the session. Now, normally, we don't need to focus too much on times in pre-qualifying, but fickle as the Spa weather is, and depending on which weather app you look at, rain might be on the way. If weather conditions later on this evening for qualifying were really bad, rain or fog, and we couldn't run, the grid would be taken from these times. So it is important that the teams do at least one good banker lap, isn't it?
I think it's very important. In fact, every time you go on racetrack, while you may be also going through a process of learning for the 24-hour event itself, but you have to have the ability at a given time and point to go out and do a representative lap time for your driver lineup, your team lineup, your package, so that you can't just go out and, well, David, you're pointing to something already.
Number 7, Oscar Tunjo, current lap time cancelled, track limits. And there's another one, that's the James Paul-driven Audi exploring the outer reaches coming through Courport-Frere.
Yeah, I mean, it's another part of the racetrack. You'll see drivers when you're into a stint and that maybe the tyre's getting a bit more worn, running very wide on the exit of the Paul-Frere curb as Valentin Abril pounds his way up the hill into the first part of Blanchimont. And purple, as you'd expect, because he was the first car to set the beginning of a proper flying lap. So he's tippy-toeing a little bit round Blanchimont. Backs out of it now because he's running up into a lot of traffic and he doesn't want to destroy it. And of course now the Aston behind is backing up and overtaking. So Vincent Abril is Vincent, just stop. Let everybody go past, then pick up the throttle.
Now you'll notice there are some cars that if you follow GT World Challenge Europe will look unfamiliar. Not only in terms of livery, because many are doing special tribute liveries for this event, like Mercedes celebrating its 1971 win, or others acknowledging Belgium and the trauma that the country has recently suffered with all the flooding, and others because they are from the, and here you have a big lose from 47. It was Maxime Martin, wasn't it, that took the car? No, Laurens Vanthoor at the wheel of it. So Laurens Vanthoor at Pouan having a big lose. Yeah,
I mean, the back of the car just drifted away, just getting into the apex of the corner. The back went, and the good old-fashioned hanging it out of the back of the axle Porsche 911 pendulum effect took over, and even the skill of Laurens Vanthoor couldn't get that one back into control. He let it spin harmlessly to the outside, but you know, in doing that, has he put a little flat spot or a medium flat spot or a monster flat spot on those 4 tires he's got on? That was not a part of the race plan so early. Well, we were just from 6 minutes or so into this session.
just going back to that car, because it drew attention to itself in exactly the wrong moment in a sense. Spectacular livery, spectacular moment. Why do we have a KCMG car here? Well, a number of entries boost this grid because they are in the Intercontinental GT Challenge, and the TotalEnergies 24 Hours of Spa is the opening round, delayed admittedly, but the opening round of the 3, along with Indianapolis and Kyalami, that are scheduled to make up the Intercontinental GT Challenge. So we've got to keep that in mind as much as GT World Challenge Europe as a championship, and of course the race in isolation. For GT World Challenge Europe, there are points at the 6 and 12 hour mark, so you might see some of the teams with a different strategy of when to use certain drivers, because you want to keep the quick guys in, to keep the car up the order, to score the points at 6 and 12 hours.
Mirko Bortolotti just slips up into 3rd place. I thought maybe it would have been a little bit further up the field. Currently, it's the Boots on Ginion BMW that has gone quickest, 2 minutes 20. It's been now overtaken by the 87 Mercedes, now by the 188 Aston Martin. Marvin Kirchhofer, who's been drafted in. Johnny Adam taken on well with the dreaded COVID, and Kirchhofer does the biz. 219.139. Let me just check back and see. Not quite as quick as this morning, by about 100th of a second.
Yeah. Yes, Johnny Adam, I'm not sure whether it's actually it or just being pinged. I think it might have been pinged. But anyway.
A lot of us got pinged.
Did you?
Yeah, I got pinged at Silverstone after the Grand Prix.
Am I right?
Yeah, and I did my duty.
Good man.
And I hadn't deleted my app.
Hadn't. Johnny, either way, we wish you well, and it's a shame you're not here, because of course this Murphy's Law, isn't it, was the year that Aston Martin have come with a pro effort. Ross Gunn parachuted into the car along with the Dane train of Nicky Tim and Marco Sorensen. Now, here, John, another of the KCMG Porsches, Eduardo Liberati at the wheel.
What can you say? I mean, that's a three-driver lineup. I mean, I think I've got my favourite for the race in the Porsche lineup, and that's going to be Lawrence Van Thor, Nick Tandy and Maxime Martin. Don't know why, just got that feeling. That's the 47. It is the 47 car we're looking at, Dean.
An interesting one is going to be the Rutronic racing car. Sven Muller, Richard Lietz, Kevin Estre. You've also got the Paul Ricard winning car of Matt Campbell, Earl Bamber and Mathieu Jaminet. I quite like the irony of that win, a Martini liveried car winning at Ricard. But that's another competitive Porsche. And so also is the Schnabel Engineering entry, Dennis Olsen, Michael Christensen, Fred Makovici. So there are good Porsches and good Audis coming out of your ears.
Well, I think that Porsche, having won it in the last 2 years, they want to win it this year, and they put a massive effort. Regrettably, the Fricadelli team, the two-entry Fricadelli entry, they withdrew based on the tragic events that took place in Germany and parts of Belgium. In fact, in this surrounding area, some horrendous stories about the flooding that took place. Spa itself got hammered at one point, probably maybe worse than the storm that came through in June, when I thought the Eau Rouge was was Eau Orange, not Rouge, all the way down from the source, down to the compression, the tunnel that leads under the circuit. I think you could have, it was like almost, you could take the tunnel. It was that bad, it was horrendous.
And there's a new patch of tarmac right there, look, coming out of La Source. That was damaged in the recent storms.
Shame they couldn't have done a better job, because there's a nasty little bump there where the cars hit that. You know, it's not hard to get the roller out and flatten it down to make it a little bit less of a hiccup.
A hiccup, yeah. There's the Iron Lynx Ferrari just emerging and pit out. Marvin Kirchhofer presses on. Dries Van Thor has now gone fastest. Let's get another talking point out of the way. Traffic. Although it's a 7-kilometre lap, with 58 cars, you're always going to find somebody, aren't you?
Well, you'll have, what you do find happens, and it could be at any point during the race, let alone during these sessions, these pre-qualifying sessions. There'll be bits of the circuit you'll not see a car for about 10 seconds. But elsewhere around the racetrack, right now, looking at the cars coming through that last turn 19, all the way up to La Source, it's like the M25 in rush hour, but all the way up the Camel Straight at the sort of end of that first leg, first sector, almost empty of cars.
I would have been telling you all about the people that are having lap times cancelled for track limit abuse, but I frankly don't have the will. There are so many. It is a constant line on the message screen, and increasingly it's got 6 or 7 numbers against it. It's just inevitable as people get into the car, they decide to see how far they can push it. But track limits have been an issue and will continue to be. So when penalties come, we'll let you know, but just take our word for it. Everybody is what's the phrase? Pushing the envelope.
Yeah, I mean, the great and the good have been pinged. I mean, Mirko Bortolotti in the 63 FFF got it all out in the Lamborghini. Sorry, there's a very long sponsor title. But they got done last lap. Mirko Bortolotti, you think that a guy like Mirko would know the limits and where he can and cannot, push that little bit harder. Still Dries van Thor on the 32 RD, 2 minutes 18.7. Still the quickest lap we've had all weekend to date.
One other thing that has been taking the officials' attention this morning is speeding in the pit lane. Because even if you speed just a little bit, you gain a few fractions of a second, and that all helps. So drivers and teams have been reminded that the speed limit is 50 kilometres an hour. That means 50.0, not 50.1 or 50.9, 50.0. And so that's something else that race control have been busy with.
Indeed, and one of the difficulties that drivers have, because when they enter the pit lane, they enter what I would describe as the Formula One pits, which is a very, very gradual incline up to the inside of La Source, but from La Source all the way down to Eau Rouge, it's a much steeper decline, and it's easy to just get that gnats over the 50 k's. It's like me sort of driving down the motorway in my big, whatever you want to call it, Tonka toy. The thing sails along. I've got to keep my eyes permanently on the speedo and not on the road, because it just sails along, and it's sublime. And that's what's happening coming down the endurance pit lane, downhill, making little errors.
But do they not have a limiter, and they set it at 50 point whatever, and you hit the button and it limits the car to that speed?
That's the story.
Yeah.
That's the story, but somehow or other, seemingly, whatever.
Now, one other thing to just get out of the way is that there are lap times being cancelled because of track limit abuse so often. Timekeeping can't keep up with it. So it might be that what we tell you is the order isn't the order at the end, because they're going to have to take some of these lap times away at the very end. So Stefan Ruhl and his team at Swiss Timing are also in for a busy interval between this and the qualifying session. Right, let's start looking at cars, not track limits, because there's an awful lot to enjoy in this entry. New drivers, new teams, and lots of Porsches. You've also got the McLarens in greater number, Jota and the Inception racing car that Ollie Milroy is driving at the moment, the quick Brit, 19th fastest. Still quickest is Dries van Thor, and he is only 3/10 up on Marvin Kirchhoff. The Paul Ricard winning Porsche Ravel Bamba is third. Jim Pla switching teams for the weekend. He has gone fourth for the Get Speed team, Mercedes of course. Lawrence van Thor after his spin is fifth, and James Poole in the Audi is sixth, and they're 37th fastest. Edoardo Liberati back out on track.
Well, they're just going through the motions at this early stage. Having said that, they would like to have those motions a bit further up the timing and scoring, I suspect. But a little bit, just looked a little bit nervy on the front as he turned in, still on the brakes. He's up half a second on his previous personal best in sector one. Then again the downhill, sometimes called corner with no name, sometimes called Speaker's Corner, whatever it is. A corner where it is very easy because it's an off-camber exit to run that little bit wide, and then you get two wheels over it, then you get a bit more of the inside off, and before you know it, you got all four wheels right off the racetrack. I didn't realise.
On its gov. That Speaker's Corner, apparently it has got a name these days, which is the Jackie Ickx Corner, but because people are so used to saying it hasn't got a name, the name really hasn't caught on.
I would like to think Jackie Ickx could have had a corner named after him. A little bit more of a challenging corner. I know a lot of the corners here. You've got Paul Frere and you've got Blanchimont, and why not call Eau Rouge Jackie Rouge or Ickx Rouge or something?
Xbox.
I mean, one of Belgium's greatest, arguably maybe the greatest race driver. I'm just trying to think who else there was. I mean, certainly in the 60s, you had people like Olivier Jean de Bien and many private owners, very wealthy Ferrari owners, but I'm just trying to think of anybody who rose, let's say, higher in the standings than Jackie Ickx did.
In racing, probably not. There was some good Belgian rally drivers, weren't there? But not necessarily circuit racers.
Cyclists, they were great. Eddie Merckx. Yes. Imagine Eddie Merckx round here on a bicycle. Ooh.
Calves were like tree trunks going up rally on, weren't they? Now, what's going on here, Porsche Guru? This doesn't look overly encouraging.
I think maybe the bottom has been hitting maybe more than it should be doing. They're looking at the splitter. Maybe a little trip over the curb, but now the hood comes up. And I was going to say there's an electric-powered Porsche, but it's not. The engine is still behind the axle, behind the rear wheels. That's the fuel tank. One of the downside of a 911 is that because it is a rear-engine car, the fuel tank sits relatively high in the front of the car. So that is a part of the sort of overall weight distribution and center of gravity and whatever. Porsche have done an amazing job over the last 60+ years to engineer this car to the point where it can just turnkey go out and win Spa-24. When I was standing hanging around doing not an awful lot, which is sort of par for the course, photographer came up to me and said, "John, I would like you to have this. You may remember a year ago when Nick Tandy, I think it might have been the back end of the race actually, got it all wayward and whatever, coming through Eau Rouge. And I made a comment, ride 'em, cowboy." Well, he's produced a series of stickers, and all the members of the row racing team, they love it. And apparently there's one on Nick Tandy's car here this weekend.
Brilliant. Well, let's hope that he's a spectacular, because he's always great value to watch. That Porsche that you've just seen in its garage, El Bamba brought it in, third fastest, so it was quick before it had whatever glitch it has had. They're going out of shot number 166 Porsche, the Hegel by T2 racing car of the AMs, Peter de Curtins, Dennis Bush, Manuel Lauck and Marc Basseng. It's in the AM Cup, although Marc Basseng, FIA GT1 world champion. And there is another car with a change of driver, because Stuart Hall, I'm afraid to say, has been another victim in terms of catching it, of COVID. So Stuart's having to sit at home and watch, and Franco Colapinto, the quick Argentine single-seater racer, drafted into the Rothko car.
Yeah, it's a big ask to come over and do 24 hours of Spa if you're not a familiar GT3 competitor. Back with Vincent Abril, who set the initial pace. And where is Vincent Abril? Where has he fallen all the way down to? Or is it maybe... Where has he fallen down? I can't see it.
35th. Bottom of page 1. 35th.
Goodness me.
2:21.036.
2.2 seconds away. Now, there's a strange thing. Aston Martin 188, Adam West. It isn't actually Adam did the time. It's Alexander West. Adam's his film star brother.
That's right.
Alexander West has just taken over from Marvin Kerkhofer in the 188 Aston Martin. So, as I'm sure Alex would love to be the driver who claiming a 2-minute 19.139 seconds, 0.3 of a second away from Dries van Voor. But it's not. He's just done that quick driver change to give Alexander West a little bit of track time, seat time in conditions which are not actually particularly bad in terms of track temperature and ambient temperature.
Yeah, Alexander West, you remember at Misano, had that very narrow win in the AM Cup. Apparently the car had a slow puncture, which was why it was losing more time. It was a very close run thing indeed. How the Lamborghini's getting on? Well, at the moment, you've got to go a reasonable way down the order, haven't you, if we can find one of the Raging Bulls.
63 was
29th, yeah.
29th position, and that was a car that was leading the field. There it is again.
So drivers cycling through, trying to get everybody a qualifying time. Dries van Voor has just pitted, incidentally. We know about 188, Marvin Kerkhofer giving way to Alexander West. Jim Pla is in, Callum Ilett's in, Alfred Renauer is in, Laurent van Voor is in. Colapinto goes out in number 30, Audi. And Bortolotti, 0.6 down in the first sector on this lap, so this isn't pulling up trees, is it?
No, it's not. And we saw he got a lap time pinged earlier in the session. So I'm assuming that right now that Bortolotti is on a set of rubber that is maybe tires he would have run this morning, and that the FFF team, the Orange 1 FFF racing team, Lamborghini Huracan Super Leggera GT3, I'm out of breath, is in 30th position. What is interesting, actually, I just caught it on source, the times are jumping all over the place, but Ben Barnacote in the Jota McLaren and Ollie Milroy, they are running 28th and 29th, and Ollie Milroy doing a very good job.
One of our viewers has just offered a suggestion, John, picking up on your track limit discussion. How about this for a thought? Start docking race laps for 5 times over the limit.
That's a very good way.
Absolutely. They wouldn't do it often, would they?
Then that has a bearing on the team. You know, the driver, if you penalise a driver with a penalty, a fine, a cash penalty, the driver is the one that suffers. But if you do something like deleting a lap or taking a lap away, then it's the entire team that suffers. And that puts the onus on the driver. In a way, maybe the driver wouldn't like it, and I'm sure teams wouldn't really want to single out a driver as as firmly as that. But whatever, if there's going to be a way of teaching racing car drivers that there are track limits, other than building circuits that are looking like giant supermarket car parks, well, somebody better come up with a good. Some of our listeners, some of our audience, some of our viewers, they actually are very good in that that lateral thinking, that they can come up with a suggestion. And why did we never think of that?
Exactly. Yeah, somebody else, one of the race officials from last week, was suggesting a sprinkler system in the curb. So dry circuit, sprinklers on the curb, that'll keep them off the curbing.
I like it. I like it. The trouble is that it sprays water onto the racetrack, and somebody who's doing something completely legitimately also could get caught out or penalised. But the concept of it certainly is, it's got a little bit of merit, but I think that in execution it would penalise more than just the driver who was at fault. But
your suggestions, please, on Twitter, and we'll see what creativity you all have. Right, Charles Wirtz has gone on track now in number 32 Audi, the quickest car. Alexander West, number 188, running second in the times, thanks to Marvin Kirchhoff. He's just had a lap time taken off him anyway for, oh, you guessed it, yes, track limits. Martin Tomczyk hard at work here in the BMW. Now, BMW was a brand we've not yet touched on much, but there are some very, very solid drivers in the BMs in the overall category, the pro class, aren't there?
If you're going to roll the dice and say who is your choice to win, I would always have the BMW as my backstop. It may not be my first-time favourite choice, but that's a great long-distance car. And there are some outstanding, Martin Tomczyk amongst them. Timo Glock, Formula One driver, gamekeeper, became a poacher by being a TV commentator. He's now back to being a gamekeeper. Why do racing drivers become TV commentators? Because they can't earn a living any other way.
But why did Timo go back to racing then?
Well,
BMW came with a suitable deal, I assume.
I would have thought. Well, Timo's been racing anyway in DTM.
Yeah, true.
But it's the lure of this 24 hours at Spa-Francorchamps, and it's also the importance, the value that the manufacturers place on those drivers that they've got within their own sort of little group of drivers that maybe go and do some racing in America, or certainly racing in DTM in Germany. Let's put Timo Glock or others into one of our cars for Spa 24 hours, and talent like that should be being used.
No, I agree. And it is a fantastic entry. I know I always say this, but it is. I mean, every year, the importance of this race for the manufacturers becomes ever more obvious, and the star quality is brought in, and each year it gets more and more and more competitive. Yet more lap times again by the board. Martin Tomczyk lost his last lap time for abusing track limits, so let's see what he can do now. He's got the McLaren behind him, which is the Jota car, and Ben Barnicoat has just put that, or on his last lap, put that 7th fastest. Ben Barnicoat, very, very quick, very impressive British driver, and 7th he is. That's way out wide there, the Mercedes coming off the Cours Paul Frère.
Well, that's a significant improvement for Ben Barnicoat, because he and the other McLaren, Ollie, wherever he was, they were 28th, 29th, so Ben Barnicoat has leapt upwards to 7th position, 2 minutes 19.312, half a second behind. And look at the traffic all backing up, people looking for track position. Tomczyk gets through, and Ben Barnicoat gets slightly compromised on this lap, and he's decided to bail into the pits and sit back and think about it. Maybe it will be a driver change. It's probably about time. He's been in the car since the session got underway, and what we're now, well, we're 20 plus minutes into the session. 25.
Yeah, Ollie Wilkinson and Rob Bell amongst the drivers in the McLaren, along with Ben Barnicoat. You see there going out of La Source Martin Tomczyk. There in the pit lane ready to go is number 53, which is the Duncan Cameron, Rino Mastronardi, Matt Griffin, Miguel Molina driven Ferrari. Miguel Molina that's been busy in America of late in the GT categories. And there, number 25, Santalok Audi, Marcus Winkelhock, Patrick Niederhauser, Christopher Hauser. That's a potential winning car, isn't it? That's a really solid entry.
That's a car, again, may not be very far up the grid when the race gets underway at 4:30 Saturday afternoon. What will be important is whereabouts will it be at the end of 24 hours, because you've got Christopher Hauser and Marcus Winkelhock in particular, who long seasoned Audi drivers.
We've got a yellow flag in Sector 2, and you're looking at Sector 2 right now. So something has happened within Sector 2. There's a yellow flag. Number 30 has spun and hit the barriers at Turn 9. Turn 9 is this corner, and it has rejoined, apparently, but number 30 is the WRT James Poole, Franco Colapinto, Benji Goethe Audi. We put Colapinto into that, I think, haven't we?
Well, if that was the case, and what were my words when you said...
It's a big ask, you said.
A young guy from single-seaters, maybe not familiar with Spa, as others around him, and maybe trying to go that little bit, maybe you know, a lot of maybes in it here. You want to do a good job for your team, and it's an unforgiving racetrack, and if you haven't got your tire temperature up to speed, and the car might feel an Audi is probably a little bit more on the nervy side than some of the other brands around it, you know, very easy, very easy. So look, Laurent van Thor spun the Porsche down at Pouhon, just the next corner down the racetrack. Easily done.
So yet more losing lap times for track limit abuse. We have got just over half the session to go as Eddie Cheever presses on in the Sky Tempesta Racing Ferrari, heading up towards the chicane. It is so unlike a bus stop now, the chicane. I think we can finally drop the tag, can't we? It is just the chicane. Right and left, up the curb, into the pit lane, in fact, will come Eddie Cheever, and then cycle through Jonathan Hui, Chris Froggatt, and the fourth driver for the weekend, Matteo Cressoni.
I don't know why the exit of 19 has got such a flat curb. Now, I understand other racetracks, Misano in particular, are joint motorcycle and car racing, so they've got to make compromises. But I know they wanted to bring motorcycle racing back to Spa, but it's not their primary sort of income stream.
Now, more Porsches here. As over the timing line comes the car of Ivan Jacoma. That's the car operated by Huber Motorsport, and there is the Paul Ricard winning 911 in the Martini colours. It's GPX Martini Racing, and it does look great, doesn't it, that?
Never got to the bottom of the difficulty with carrying the sponsor's brand on the car when the racetrack's named after. I think we brought this up actually at the time and never heard any more about it, so probably best leave it, I think. Jaminet fully committed up over radio on the Porsche, using all the racetrack and a little bit more, but within what would be described as track limits. 2 wheels over, but not 4.
So there is Jaminet heading up towards Les Cons, and the Porsche currently is 4th fastest. Remember, that was the one we saw in its box for a while, but has gone back out, and Jaminet there way up the curb.
Yeah, the exit of all that section up at Les Cons, again, gets pretty abused. Unless you're really being rude and you're doing it consistently, I think that one gets a bit of a nod. Whoa, there you go. That's about on the... I mean, Jaminet had the whole Porsche 4-wheel sliding, so the coefficient of grip on the black stuff and then on the painted outside of the corner, speaker's corner, clearly is different.
Yeah, Jaminet is having a real go here, isn't he? Flinging the car around and turning now into the piff-paff, right, then flick left. The best of the Mercedes, incidentally, Danny Juncadella 5th, but Jaminet either is really pushing on cold tyres, or that is an evil handling. Oh, and as the Porsche has spun at the bottom of the hill there, so there's a yellow flag out because we've had a rotation. Just to finish the Jaminet point, it doesn't look as well planted as you expect, that car.
No, again, I don't know whether they're running tyres that would have been run this morning, and therefore the tyres much later in its tyre cycle, performance grip, you know, whatever. So the Porsche stuck in that down at Campus Corner. So Daniel Edelman for Hauerbath Motorsport. So gets away and drags a little bit of gravel on the racetrack, but that's just probably the thing you don't do in a 911 is brake, turn, and off the throttle. Three things that when you buy a 911, certainly back in the 60s, you were advised to do one or two, but not all three at one time.
Full course yellow because of this car. It's got going, but the race director had called for it in 20 seconds. The car has got going, so it'll restart on short notice. Just going back to that point about tyres, the teams get 30 sets of tyres for the weekend, 2 of which have to be used from the test day. We go green again. So they've got 30 sets, 28 new, and then if you get into Superpole, which is the...
TV for race control?
which is the top 20 qualifying, you get a new set of tyres there. But it could be they're using used.
When you say they get given, they actually purchase these tyres.
Yeah, sorry, yes.
Yes. I know it's a sort of silly little detail because we're so accustomed to thinking of Formula One or whatever, where there are tyre deals between different teams. But here the tyres are supplied on a commercial basis. So everybody has to mind that the tyre bill is about 50,000 euros or dollars or something.
Yes,
it's a phenomenal amount of money for a 24-hour race. I mean, imagine you blew all your money. I think probably give you a credit if you don't use the tyres.
I will rephrase it, but under the regulations, 30 sets of tyres are available to the teams. Is that better?
I think that suits it perfectly.
You're happy with that? Okay,
yeah.
Right. So, 2 used sets come what may, and that might be why you're seeing drivers slithering, because they are on all the rubber. Now there, having had it off, is the number 30 Audi. You saw in the background Benji Goethe looking on. He was one of the stars, wasn't he, with Calvin van der Linde at Misano. Got a podium in that second sprint race.
Coming of age, I think, was the way we would maybe describe, certainly in his early efforts, thinking back to Monza, 2 years ago, when he was very, very inexperienced, but slowly learning. But there's the damage.
Wow.
And that's the diffuser at the rear of the car, and whether he backed the car in, the rear wing's off. No, it's not, the rear wing's still there. So whatever the damage is to the diffuser, can they repair it, or are they going to have to replace it? Ideally, they'd like to repair it. They don't want to start running into the spares bins at this early phase of a weekend. You want to keep those parts in the event that something happens during the 24 hours itself.
Pit lane's fairly busy at the moment as the teams cycle through different drivers. We're into the second half then of pre-qualifying. We've got now, 27.5 minutes still to go. There is the 93 Sky Tempesta Ferrari. Eddie Cheever was at the wheel of it, brought the car in. And forgive me, out of 58 cars, hunting to find who it is that's got behind the wheel of it now. There is Lucas Auer, Gerhard Berger's nephew, who goes into Les Camps. Mercedes DTM racer, now GT racer. Interesting to see how he gets on in this car, the Yaka ASP entry.
Did you say he's the nephew of Gerhard Berger?
I did.
I did. I think it was, my mind was elsewhere. The Gerhard.
The Gerhard. Yes, indeed. Who himself, of course, now is overseeing a DTM with GT3 machinery.
Indeed he is, and anxious to expand that championship. But, how can any of those events match what we're going to see here this weekend? Just watching this car, I think a lot of the drivers currently are on tyres that have done a lot of this. We're seeing movement from cars more than I would anticipate if they were on fresh rubber.
News from the pits is that it is a new floor tray going on that number 30 Audi that we were looking at, so that's where the damage has been done underneath more than the rear from what we could see. But with only 26 minutes to go, you can ill afford things like that.
Well, that pit stop's going to take probably the best part of 10 to 15 minutes. And these guys are trained to, and again, with products like Audi, Porsche, Mercedes, well, in fact, all the GT3 brands, BMW, they build these cars. Not only do they build them very strong, but they build them with the ability for teams to be able to work on them. And if you think back about maybe rallying, when amazing feature carried out by the mechanics to change an axle, a differential or whatever, well, in this form of racing, it's basically about replacing suspension or body components. And they have to be detachable, removable and replaceable. And all the fixings have got to be such that they can be, you don't want a fixing that suddenly you're going to spin out to realign.
One question that's just been posed on Twitter: why do these teams and drivers do pre-qualifying before the actual qualifying? It's a kind of throwback in the terminology to old FIA GT days a long, long time ago, where if a car had a problem in the qualifying session and a driver wasn't able to do a time, then it suddenly created all sorts of problems because under the regulations they had not qualified. So if you had another session with the word qualifying in it, it sort of got you around that problem, because you could say, yes, I have qualified because I did the pre-qualifying session. So it's not a case that they have to pre-qualify for qualifying. It's just a way of making sure that there is a session available to drivers as an extra qualifying period, if you like, because now qualifying, although it is in 4 parts, it is still 1 part per driver. So if you aren't able to take part in that, but you have set a time in pre-qualifying, then you have qualified for the race under the regulations, and it just stops an awful lot of administrative dramas.
And also, we're going to broadcast a session that says practice as opposed to pre-qualifying.
Yes.
You know, when you get the qualifying into anything, you're going to say the guys are going to be on it.
That's true.
And that's another factor.
Yeah,
I think is
yeah.
you know, it's just a perception as to why you've got to watch this.
Now, Raffaele Marciello, new livery, but pressing on and coming up now through the Les Combes sequence. And he's on it, he's pressing on. He was 4/10 down in the first sector, but Lello is having a real go. He's up the curb, coming over the brow, down to Les Combes. Another one to watch, by the way, is the Bentley 107. Pierre-Alexandre Jean has done the absolute best of anybody in the first sector. So the 107 Bentley should just rocket itself up the times at the end of the lap, as Marciello there uses as much curb as he's comfortable with at turn 9.
And even Marciello, just coming through Les Combes, the car looked that little bit not entirely planted, and you can almost sense coming through Pouhon, this wonderful down, to me the best corner on this racetrack, because all the others are now almost not too easy, but they're getting there, where Pouhon really is about commitment, courage, and getting you and the car working together.
That you would say was wide, but Marciello has bought himself clear track space here. Lucas Auer, by the way, is up to 8th fastest. Marciello's about to get to the end of this middle sector, and again he's way off the circuit there, and he's down again.
Well, the car doesn't look, as I would assume that this ASP Mercedes would be. It's not dancing on its toes. It looks as if Raffaele Marciello has got quite a lot of work to do behind the cockpit to get a time. Now he's down in sector 1 in terms of his personal best, or the car's personal best. Again, look how wide he runs into turn 18. Overruns, then has to compensate to cut back for turn 19. As a consequence, speed off turn 19 is compromised. So the last lap, 2 minutes 20.2 against that car's best of 1 second down. Doesn't seem an awful lot, but you could see the car look to me to be more of a handful than I would anticipate that car being.
A quick one on another thought about track limits. How about an ECU map, says Steve Tadman, controlled by race control, 5 track limit pings, and race control can apply 5 or 10 or 20 or however many seconds of a slower engine map.
I mean, listen, with electronics and what's going on up here, that looked a bit uncertain. The 19 Lamborghini sort of not looking particularly committed, then just shut the door. And that could have been a little moment. Fortunately, it wasn't. So that's the Hiroshi Hamaguchi. It's not Hamaguchi in a minute. Was that Stefano Constantini?
It was, yes.
Phil Keane would not do that on that car, would he?
No, he would not. Go on, what about this ECU idea?
I think, look, anything is, great. But what's going to end up happening is there's going to be, because that will be absolutely merciless. So whatever would happen, which is so many cars, again, every lap being penalised, you'd end up at almost a case of hard law. A bad law makes hard cases, or hard cases make bad law, but hard cases make bad law. A favourite saying of the late Max Mosley.
Is that right?
Yeah, amongst many.
I suppose the other element to that, Steve, as well, would be that you've got to be careful when you were to apply it, because if you said hit the button, you've got to be absolutely sure that there's no car close up behind, and it becomes dangerous. But I like the idea. 20 minutes and a bit still to go. I got excited about the Bentley. Well, Pierre-Alexandre Jean got the car up to 6th fastest, number 107. This is Rolf Ineichen for the Emil Frey Racing Team. And going out of Bruxelles, plunging downhill. He's got the Iron Lynx Ferrari behind him.
I don't know if it's me, but virtually every car we're seeing on screen, they just look like they're tippy-toeing rather than the level of commitment that hopefully we'll get to see in qualifying when they'll have fresh rubber. But it just seems as if there's something that is that little 5% that none of the car's drivers, with maybe the exception of the 32 Audi, that's still by far and away quickest car on challenge for quite a long time, even with Chris Goodwin behind the wheel of the 188 Aston Martin, unable to challenge the time of Dries van Thor. No, was it Van Thor or Van Thor?
It was Van Thor.
Kelvin van der Linde was quickest
yeah.
this morning in that
That's
car,
right.
but has yet to do his stint. So I'm assuming that Kelvin will get in, and I know he'll rip it, won't he?
Oh, Will
Go
he ever?
on,
Will
go
he
on,
ever?
Kelv.
Now, I saw Vincent Voss last night. He was in typically jolly, confident form. Really looking forward to this race. He said, we're going to be on it from FP1 onwards.
A lot of cars running wide, and look again, almost a mirror of what we saw just a few moments ago from Raffaele Marcello, just overrunning into turn 18. Can't keep the front of the car tight to the right and compromise yourself coming across the start-finish line.
So there's an icon down towards La Source. How the KCMG Porsche's getting on? Gently, I think you would say, because Maxime Martin now at the helm of number 47 is 15th fastest. We've not yet had Nick Tandy into the car. Remember, for qualifying, it is 4 parts, 1 driver per session, and we get to Super Pole tomorrow to sort out the front of the grid.
Strange for me seeing Maxime Martin, who, for me, principally so synonymous with Aston Martin and with BMWs at one point, behind the wheel of a Porsche. But his experience and knowledge of this race and what it takes to get the job done is an invaluable contribution to the KPMG team.
But again, what you don't necessarily know is it's something like this is what the teams are doing. Are they going absolutely flat out for a time? Will that come at the very end, or are they just quite happy to treat this as free practice 2, but then go for a banker lap at the end?
Well, 2.1 seconds down in sector 2 is not a simulation of a qualifying lap. That is guaranteed. So they're essentially, I would say, cycling through the 3 drivers in the case of the KCMG Porsche, where some teams, and I noticed that, maybe that's me again, but there seem to be more teams that are running a 4-driver lineup. I think that's a reflection of just what a tough race it is. And if you maybe are a Pro-Am or a Silver Cup team, but maybe more in the Pro-Ams, to have a 4th driver and share, I mean, you're doing it roughly 6 hours over the 24, it's not too much of a stretch. And the other factor is, of course, how many hours of this race are going to be in darkness? It's going to be something like 7 or 8 hours.
Yeah.
I mentioned to you earlier that Norbert Singer, that's the Porsche. Norbert Siedler had a big shunt here during the test that took place back end of June. And as a consequence, I think it might have been, a big shunt for the Porsche.
Now that's taken out some of the marker boards. It might look worse than it is because he's demolished one of the corner markers there.
That's the Porsche we saw down at the bottom of
I think you're right.
Stub.
Red flag.
Yeah, so he spun coming out of Blanchimont.
That's not number 11 Ferrari, I'll tell you that much. That is the Porsche. It's a red flag. And they are made of polystyrene, so it does look worse than it is. But because we've got bits all over the road, that's low on one side.
It is.
I think the puncture that's caused it?
I think the right rear has gone down, whether that's the cause or whether that's the effect. But watch again and watch. Oh, it's just been tire. It's the tire. Look at the tire. It's shredding itself. Now, Robert Reinhardt didn't know. Maybe he should have felt. But certainly he appears not to have known as he came through Blanchimont. The tire just shredded and went into how many hundreds of pieces. And he was simply a passenger. So he was very fortunate that the car didn't spear off into the inside of the exit of Blanchimont. That would have been a much bigger incident. So any damage would be fundamentally cosmetic. Apart from, of course, the corner, the braking zones and whatever, demarcation zones, polystyrene all over the place.
Clock ticks on down at the moment because of pre-qualifying rather than qualifying. So the clock is ticking, and basically the reason is they've got to sweep the circuit of all of those bits of polystyrene. So that Porsche has been in the wars, hasn't it, in this session?
It's had 2 moments. I mean, the first one was pretty harmless. That second one, I mean, it's not nice to see a tyre just, disintegrate the way that right rear did. And Blanchimont's a very, very high-speed corner. And just simply, you're sitting there as a passenger hoping that you're going to get away with it. And in this instance, well, that's what happened. He got away with it.
So there, number 70 McLaren, which is the car that Kevin Manson is at the wheel of, is in its pit area, the Inception racing car. And the punctured Porsche plods down the pit lane. Flames licking away at the back as well, though. Yeah,
that's just a little bit of spare fuel that's in the exhaust system, so a good blip of the throttle, give it max RPM, that'll blow all that waste or a little bit of sort of residue of fuel in the system away. Watch again, look, the tyre is gone. Robert Reinhardt was very lucky because if that car had spun inwards, to the wall which demarcates the inside of the circuit. That would have been a heavy impact and would have been a severely damaged Porsche, but fortunately, maybe divine guidance or whatever, kept it off and spun harmlessly to a standstill.
So we await the restart of the session. Kelvin van der Linde, incidentally, has just taken over number 32. Bentley 107 was on another good lap before that red flag came out. Pierre-Alexandre Jean, absolute best, but we know the Bentley works well in a straight line, and there's a big, long straight.
Thundering herd, just up the straight. We saw at Mazzano, the Bentley was consistently 4 to 5, 6 kilometres quicker than the rest of the competition around it.
There it is.
We wait to see what AWS are going to produce in terms of their various sector speeds or straight line speeds, but I would assume that one of these Bentleys will still be pretty much consistently fastest car in a straight line. And here at Spa-Francorchamps, the long climb up the hill to Les Combes over the Carmel Straight, if you've got the speed there, it doesn't have to make the rest of the lap a lot easier when it comes to overtaking.
Well, there in the background is the Herbert Motorsport Porsche that has come back in after that punctured tyre. Just in front of it, the Team Allied racing car, Lars Kern, Bastien Bus, Julien Apotelos and Arno Santamato's Porsche. Right, the Collards, father and son, are here. Rob and Ricky share the Ram Racing Mercedes, and it's Ricky at the wheel.
They are great. I mean, I love to see a dad and a son pairing. We have seen it before. I mean, I think the Andretti family did it. I think Derek and Just in Time. That's his son, Justin Bell. I call him Just in Time. He found it just in time.
Been a long lockdown, John, hasn't it? John Watson Sings, by the way, is going to be out for Christmas, available from all good remaindered record shops. Order yours now.
Delete.
Now then, just confirmation that it's debris on the track that we've had the stoppage for, and the cars will go back out, but they're not going to have that much time left. You can see many of them are heading to the pit exit because they want to be back on the circuit. Number 40 there is the Mercedes of Nicholas Bourne, Jordan Love, Yannick Mettler and Lance David Arnold. I think he's going to be him at the wheel when the session rejoins. So we'll go green shortly, but there you can see, in fact, some of the cars still making their way back in, and hence it's not the easiest thing in the world for the marshals to have to clear the circuit because they are still having to dodge cars. Now, Earl Bamber we need to hear from. His car's fourth. We can say hello to him. And also our reporter for the weekend in the pits, Gemma Scott.
Well, it's our first red flag of the weekend. Of course, we're expecting to see many more across the 24 hours. But talk to me about how the track's feeling and the car's running for now.
Yeah, I mean, so far for us, it's been pretty good. Yeah, both sessions in the top 5. Definitely made some steps since the pre-test as well. The team have been working really hard. Obviously, I think everyone's getting used to this new track limit marshalling system. I think it's something really good that the championship's introduced, and it's going to sort of take away some advantages that some people had. So yeah, we're just getting used to it. Obviously, the big one tonight is quali, making the top 20, and then getting our 9 laps in and preparing the race.
Talking to people this morning, people are saying where the tracks had to be relayed in places, that it's green and there's no rubber down. How do you find it?
Yeah, I mean, definitely in a couple of spots it is very, very green, but it's going to rubber in. We've got 60 cars here, so by the start of the race it's going to be normal. I think everyone around the region's done an amazing job to get the track back into such a good condition, and obviously to be able to host the race this weekend is something awesome, so hats off to them. We'll rubber it in for them, and yeah, then we'll go racing.
We're going to see some quick Porsches.
Fingers crossed, but you know, there's a lot of strong cars. Definitely the 32 looks very strong. The Audi, though, you know, it's their local track. They've always been quick here, and there's a lot of other really strong lineups. We saw that at Paul Ricard, you know, with the Ferraris, the BMWs in the mix, and always Mercedes. So, you know, I think it's going to be a fight between all the manufacturers this weekend, and it's going to be ultimately who doesn't make the mistakes that's going to end up there at the front. And obviously there's rain and weather that we always talk about here in Spa as well. So first let's see if we survive the morning, and then we'll talk about it.
Are you guys the fastest Porsche?
Right now, but I don't know. You know, there's a lot of quick Porsches. We've got 12 of them. So, you know, hopefully we can fill half of the top 20. That wouldn't be bad, huh?
It would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Have a great weekend, Al.
Thanks.
Just going back to that point of Earl Bamber's about the way that track limits are being policed even more this year, the cars now have for want of a better description really, the equivalent of a transponder, but not for timing, but for track limit purposes. And around the circuit, the key areas are masts, and that creates a beam. And when that little transponder breaks the beam, the officials know that it is outside the track limit. So it's not being purely done on the human eye anymore. There is a system that is being developed, but it's being used this year, where if the car runs out wide, it's going to break that beam outside the track limit, and there's the report, there's the evidence of it. So, as I say, it's not just down to the hard-working volunteers and the marshals. There is now telemetry and an electronic system in place to add to making sure that people are being penalised when they should, and not when they shouldn't be penalised. He's watching. Yeah. So got the cars there in the pit lane, and Kelvin van der Linde will be out next in number 32. We are down to 8 3/4 minutes to go, but only now are we getting, I think, close to the restart. I'm just peering into the distance. The road looks clear of people, so hopefully Alain Adon can release the cars, because the fast lane is open. And it's funny, isn't it? You think, oh, we've got a full 60 minutes of this session, but actually it flies by, doesn't it?
Well, when you've got effectively...
Green flag.
When you've got a 2 minute plus 20, roughly 20 second per lap, plus an out lap and an in lap. So you're not getting a lot of laps for your money on this long 7.7 kilometre Spa-Francorchamps circuit. And that's why there's a premium on being circumspect and not maybe throwing it into the ditch or into the hedge or into the barrier, because you will lose out and the team will lose out.
Now, why is number 50 here having work done to it? The Hub Auto Mercedes, rather than Ferrari, as they used to have. Nicky Katzberg drafted in to replace Jelmer Berman, who's under the weather, and Maxi Buch and Maxi Goertz, winners together here in 2013. That's a long, long time ago now, but the Maxis are reunited. Yeah,
great to see them. I think they were a great partnership. They were stunning at that period, when in that 13-14 period, when Mercedes, if you put a Mercedes together with Max Buch and Max Goertz, you know you're going to winning. There they are. Well, they're changing the pads. Are they changing the disc also? Certainly work going on that right rear corner. Now the traffic floods up the hill into Les Combes, 7 minutes and a little bit left. So by the time they get back to start-finish line, they're going to be looking at about 5 and a bit minutes. Just over 5 and a bit, maybe 5 3/4 minutes. That's 2 flying laps and maybe a third if you're at the very front of this train of cars, all 58 cars, more or less, piling out. Look at the pit lane exit. This very long and tortuous pit lane exit here at Spa-Francorchamps, where the cars blend in at the exit where Radion is, and then you've got that little kink coming onto the Camel Straight. So a car can come on to the racetrack, rejoin the racetrack at a very high speed, actually, because they've gone across the demarcation line that marks the end of the pit lane. As the Inception McLaren drops down the hill through Bruxelles.
I don't know about you, I reckon it's getting warmer. Temperatures are going up, it's getting sunnier, even though it's late afternoon. What are we on now? Just approaching 20 to 5 local time. It's going to be cooler for qualifying, might be wet for qualifying, you never know. And then, of course, at the very end of the day, they've all got to do the night practice, haven't they?
Night practice will be interesting if weather is inclement. Drivers, I mean, I heard Earl Bamber suggesting that the track will, as it stays in this condition, you'll rubber in, and that's what drivers are looking for. They're looking for the circuit, in a sense, to come to them, rather than a driver or a team chasing the circuit. And that's often a case that, you know, a driver can be misled by thinking, oh, what's gone wrong? We need to change this and that and the other. Well, no, just keep doing what you're doing. Stick to your plan. The track will actually come to you. And that's what they're going to hope for tonight in qualifying, and undoubtedly when they get into nighttime practice. And it will be black. It'll be dark as you know what. So you want the track to be dry. You want to get that practice in for all 3, or in some cases 4 driver lineups, to give them the confidence. And that's nighttime driving is about one thing, and that's about confidence.
10 minutes to 9 local time. Qualifying gets underway, part 1 of 4, because remember that many of the cars 4 drivers. So join us for that later on if you are so able. So we've got 5 more minutes of this session to go, and the road is just a sea of cars. It's a wash.
Yeah, I mean, and nobody's going to do anything meaningful because they're too close to cars ahead of them, and they've got a car close behind them. So, I mean, okay, you can go out and do some, but I mean, I wanted to see Nick Tandy. I want to see Nick Tandy get into that Porsche and go out and just knock Kelvin van der Linde. He didn't do the time. Kelvin's in the car now. The time was set by Dries van Thor. Below that Audi time out of the water. With just on the last lap when the checkered flag's out. Wow. I mean, what a star. Now, he's been driving Corvettes. He's a Corvette contracted driver in North America. I think it's wonderful to have him back here at Spa this year. You know, the incumbent, and back in not quite the same colour scheme that we had last year, but certainly potential, for me, one of the potential winners come Sunday 4:30.
Yeah, the KCMG team is another that's quietly got on with its job over in Hong Kong and in the NLS, VLN, Nürburgring long distance races, and has done a good enough job to be now blessed by Porsche with factory drivers, with factory support, and comes here as a realistic challenger for a win. We saw KCMG's ability with cars because it supplied the Formula 4 single-seaters at the FIA Motorsport Games 2 years ago, for example. So, you know, that's an organisation that has done a very good job across different disciplines.
Antonio Fuoco behind the wheel looking at the Iron Lynx Ferrari. Another young charger, another driver who's got I think, an awesome future ahead of him, albeit in GT3 right now, but has been said or considered to be penciled in for bigger and better things within the family Ferrari in years to come. So keep an eye, we'll maybe get to see him for the entire lap. So that car is currently 12th, quickest wasn't Fuoco who set the time, but certainly a young driver along with Callum Eilert, another great young Ferrari talent. So just wonderful to have these kids that are sort of having to take a step sideways to get motor racing, to be able to pursue their passion and their dream and their love. And here you are at Spa in a Ferrari. How good does that get? Down the hill into Bruxelles, so 0.3 of a second down on the cars, or maybe in this case Fuoco's personal best. Runs away wide coming through Speaker's Corner. That'll be noted. Down into Pouhon. The thing with Pouhon is to try and get the car in with the least amount of speed loss. It's really about just feathering the steering and the throttle. If you can go in there and just lift rather than having to brake and allow the car just to, the way it can really flow through a corner, it's a lovely, a fantastic feeling, and it's you need corners like Pouhon on more racetracks to challenge drivers more. Oh, again, well, that was certainly a challenge. Kicked up the dust from the left rear as he just caught the very edge of the gravel trap, so he's not leaving much in there. He's 0.8 of a second sector up on his previous personal best. So maybe we'll see this car, David, coming up a little bit more than in 12th position.
Certainly, Antonio Fuoco is on fire, isn't he, as he comes then up now through the left of Blanchimont. Traffic ahead, but did a very, very good job in that middle sector. So, as you say, 12th at the start of the lap. He's only 8 thousandths down on the Mercedes ahead of him in the times. So Fuoco needs to find just over 0.6 of a second to go to the top of the times. He needs to find thousandths to improve, and actually, he stays 12th fastest. The lap time was a 2:19.49, so 400 slower than his earlier best.
Shame, because he picked up time in those final sectors, but just looking at the 57, which is the Winfield Racing's, and that's done, I don't know if that time was done by Ellis or whether that was who's in 57s to check it.
Phil Ellis had just done that.
It is Phil Ellis, because
yeah.
Michael Garnier had driven that car this morning, and he had been, is he Pro-Am or is it Silver Cup, that car?
57 was a silver,
it was the quickest of its category anyway. There were two cars in the top 10 that were not pro cars, and one of them was the 57 Mercedes.
That Maxi Goetz, Maxi Boot Mercedes we saw earlier, I'm getting worried about, because it's only done in total something like 4 laps and is the slowest, and he's still in the pit lane. So number 50 Mercedes is the slowest with 3 quick drivers aboard, and the flag is about to come out, because you can see on the clock we are 3, 2, 1, 0 seconds away now. So the flag is out. Pre-qualifying is at an end. The road is still very busy. there are yet more lap times being thrown out of the window, but that is the quickest car, the very sure-footed Skechers Audi. Kelvin van der Linde at the wheel of it.
Another time that's just suddenly leapt up onto timing and scoring is Kevin Estre, the irrepressible Frenchman in the Rutronic Racing Porsche. So Kevin, he has done a great job to get that car just outside the top 10 behind Felipe Fraga in the 89 Mercedes. Not surprisingly not driving with Raffaele Marcello, that split the driver talent up on the ACA ASP Mercedes this year.
I had to write 200 words the other day about why Kevin Estre is such a star in a Porsche, and it was very, very hard to cram it all into 200 words. A very, very exciting driver to watch. Kelvin van der Linde, even on this lap up to the checkered flag, is pressing on, but the traffic's going to go against him. He's slightly down in that first sector anyway. I think we expected WRT and its Audis to be quick, and there's more evidence because number 32 then tops both of the sessions we've had thus far today.
Indeed, but was pointed out by Earl Bamber, you know, being quickest in the session is an accolade in itself.
Yeah.
But of course, qualifying is going to come up, and that'll be a different dynamic.
So van der Linde's lap, this is why John's going, Kelvin van der Linde's current lap has been cancelled because of track limits abuse. He's still on it. I mean, irrespective of the fact he's not going to go any quicker, he's diving through the traffic. Whoa! And off the road.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those, almost you could see him saying, maybe he just got the news. Sorry, Kevin, that last lap was cancelled. Whatever it was, anyway, overran badly, then had to cut inside turn 19, and it's all over. The flag is out, so it's a done deal. But on that in lap, there's still opportunity for a driver like Kelvin van der Linde to give the team information. That's what the team want.
True.
So on this lap, how many laps the car has done on this set of tyres, that still goes into the, not the computer literally, but it goes into the notes that are written up by the team. And I don't think Kelvin van der Linde, he's not actually on it, but he's coming back into the fair lick. So Nick Tandy got behind the wheel of the 47 Porsche, unfortunately didn't get a chance to set a representative time. Well, the car did, but he didn't. So that's down in 19th position.
What did we read into that session, if anything, apart from the fact that track limits are going to be a constant drama?
Well, that's going to be probably an irritant to everybody. The 32 Audi, for sure, across all its drivers, is going to be a handful for pretty much everybody. But of course, this race is not one on pace alone. It's one on staying out of trouble. Don't make schoolboy errors. We haven't got a girl in the race, have we?
No, I don't think we do this
okay,
year.
we'll
have to think about that.
We'll leave
No, I
the
don't think we
schoolboy
do.
errors.
Yeah.
And again, that's the turnaround in the pit lane, metronomic. The race is won by the team that spends the least amount of time in the pits and doesn't make any errors on the racetrack. Stays out of trouble.
The least time you can spend in the pits, the better. You're anticipating, really, 23 pit stops, and of course one of those will be that 5-minute mechanical pit stop to try to even the level the playing field a little bit between the wealthier teams and the poorer teams. There, Sheldon van der Linde brings number 34 BMW in, the Valkenhorst entry, third fastest.
I mean, that car, not that particular car, but in Kailami last year, it was a sensational performance. Again, maybe not the car that you'd look to being potential race winner, but there's about 20 cars I could say that could any of them end up winning, standing on the podium, rubbing their hands. I think, didn't we do a good job?
Yeah. So number 34 BMW David Pittard along with Sheldon van der Linde, and the third driver of that car is Marco Wittmann, DTM champion. So the BMW goes into the garage. Now, number 32 Audi the fastest. It is Dries Van Thor that did the time, and he is with Gemma.
Dries, a fantastic way to start the weekend. Obviously, you've got a great lineup and great pace.
Yeah, at the moment it's going really well. Yeah, we've been really trying to be working on mainly our new tire runs. Actually, basically, we really try to be on the front of qualifying. I think it's important here to be in the front at the first car. Actually, the whole 24 our race we hope, but I mean, especially in the beginning, to not lose any time to the leading group. So that's what we are trying now. So it's looking good, but like anything can happen. It's very long to go still.
Obviously, qualifying pace is one thing, but converting that into the race pace and strategy, it's a long 24 hours.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's why we're now. I mean, I think our qualifying thing is looking okay, but now we really have to focus on our long runs and making sure that they are looking good. Because yeah, I mean, it's not just a 1 hour sprint race, but it's a 24-hour race. So.
Thank you very much, Juan Andres.
Thank you very much.
Job well done.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely right. It isn't a 1 hour sprint race, but where he is wrong, it's 24 1 hour sprint races. He didn't tell us that, did he?
All stuck together. Let's just have a quick look at the order. I mean, the times, read into them what you will, but it is Audi then fastest across free practice and pre-qualifying. 2:19.0 this morning, 2:18.7 in pre-qualifying. So the wick's being turned up a little bit as we get down towards the meat of the day and that qualifying session in a few hours' time. Second fastest, Marvin Kirchhoff. I don't think we actually saw Charlie Eastwood in that car much, if at all, in the session. 1:88 to go, second fastest, ahead of the Sheldon van der Linde, David Pittard, Marco Wittmann BMW. The time of Alabama putting it fourth, then Kevin Estre up to fifth in the end. So number 21, late session, did do what you expect of Kevin Estre to go ahead of Raffaele Marciello, Pierre-Alexandre Jean. Philip Ellis, recent DTM winner, excellent job to be eighth ahead of the Marcus Winkelhock Audi, and then to round out the top 10, Ben Barnicoat's time in the McLaren. I won't read out every combination of drivers, but just to make the point, as you look at the different backgrounds of the numbers towards the far right, that you have overall, you have Silver, Pro-Am and Am, and this is the opening round of the Intercontinental GT Challenge as well. So some of the manufacturer entries that we've got are for the IGTC. They drop in for this one event within GT World Challenge Europe, but they're concentrating on that. So there are an awful lot of different battles, different situations to have a look at. And at the very foot of the times, as I mentioned a while ago, is that number 50 Mercedes of Maxi Goetz that clearly has a problem. Only did 4 laps, and the Habato racing car, the slowest of all. So we've not seen the best of that, but that is a team on the back foot really going into qualifying, because they don't know until they hit the road again whether or not the problem, whatever it is, has been solved. We'll try and trace that. It's in the bottom pit, so we'll send Gemma all the way down there, ready for the news to break for qualifying. Number 54 Porsche, another one that's a long, long way down. Klaus Battler, Christian Engelhardt and Matteo Cairoli. So stories then to address, ready for the qualifying session. And as I say, qualifying is going to get underway at 20:50 local time. We'll be on air 10 minutes before that. 4 parts to the qualifying session as normal. And for the moment, Spa remaining dry. Has done so, I think I'm right in saying, all day, which is a rarity. But for the moment, the area needs no more rain after all that it has suffered of late. And many of the teams, many of the championships, fully supportive of the local population and its travails over the last few weeks. Let's just have a look back at what happened in that pre-qualifying session, with the cars accelerating out on track and the green flag, everybody on their toes, eager to get out quick as and try and maximise that amount of track time, and threading their way through traffic, the drivers trying to buy themselves clear track space early on. Lawrence Danforth had a long looping slide, and around it went off the racetrack at Pouin went the Porsche. Benjamin Heiters was another one going wide coming out of Les Combes, and then we had driver changes. Franco Colapinto taking over Audi number 30. So climbing up through Radion, that was Franco Colapinto's damage. He'd been off at Speaker's Corner. Then we had 911 and Daniel Alaman off down at the approach to Campus. Lots of other battles going on track, and that 911 Porsche was not the only car, and not its only moment, in fact, of the session. In came number 31 Audi, for example. This was that great view through Eau Rouge as the cars hammered over the curbs. And then, with Robert Renauer at the wheel, 911 had a punctured tyre. Interesting to trace why that happened, what he'd run over, how he had decided to go down that tyre. But either way, it was a big, spectacular spin through the polystyrene, and that was a very, very dead tyre indeed. So Pirelli will have a look at that. The polystyrene all over the road meant that the red flag flew. The road had to be cleared. But at the end of the session, it is Audi number 32, thanks to the efforts of Dries Van Voort, that is the fastest. Calvin van der Linde had a moment right at the very end. But that sets us up nicely for qualifying as we get set for that in a few hours' time here at Spa-Francorchamps. Join us for that a little later if you can. For now, from all of us, it's goodbye.